Uruguay and Brazil at Allegiant Stadium. A tense game, maybe not the most fun game for the neutral as it ends scoreless after 90 minutes and into a penalty shootout. Not really a whole ton of chances in the first half, maybe the best one for Darwin Nunez, kind of a scuffed header in the 70th minute. The game changed. Nandes sent off for Uruguay after a VAR saw him get a straight red for a challenge on Rodrigo. It then went to a penalty shootout. Eder Militao saw his first attempt for Brazil saved by Rocher. Brazil actually missed 2 of the first 3 penalty attempts, and Uruguay went on to win 4-2 on penalty kicks. All right, for more on this, we've got, I believe, with us Alejandro Moreno, but we'll call on him in just a little bit. Brazil here, Herc, had the advantage, a man up for the last 20 minutes, but couldn't take advantage of it. Why not?
Almost 20 minutes, because it was a terrible game, because Uruguay brought them down to where they wanted to play. This looked more like Diego Alonso's Uruguay, the Uruguay of old, than Marcelo Bielsa's Uruguay. That Uruguay was on the front foot, that attacked, that went with numbers and pace through the flanks. No, they were more interested in kicking Endrick, more interested in kicking Rodrigo, kicking Rafinha, anybody in the midfield, Paqueta, whoever they can get their hands on. And Brazil, in the first half, obliged. They also fell into that trap. This was one of the worst matches we've seen here at Copa America. And as soon as they went down a man, Bielsa takes off Darwin Nunez. He puts in a midfielder, more support, and he was just holding the result. He was hoping for these penalty kicks, which you should at that point. You're a man down against a team that was already outpossessing you, outpassing you, a team that had a man up. You've got to do what you can to play within the rules to give yourself a chance to win. There's no overtime. So you know that it'd be very difficult if there was overtime for you to pull out a result or to even get to penalty kicks. Because of that, you know you have to wait 15, 16 minutes if you can, defend well, force penalty kicks, give yourself an opportunity to advance, and that they did.
All right, we'll get the perspective of the folks on the desk in just a second, but we got Gustavo Hofman, our colleague from ESPN Brazil, who's joining us now. Gustavo, obviously, I'm sure your heart's broken a little bit. You just saw your country go out in the quarterfinals via penalties, but what did you think of the performance, especially in those last 20 minutes, Gustavo, when they had the man advantage?
Hello, everybody. Well, very frustrating for Brazil. It was really frustrating for Brazil. To be kicked out of Copa America in the quarterfinals for Brazil is not good. It is not enough. Of course, that, and we talked a lot about that over the last days, it is a beginning of a new process with Dorival Jr. But people always expect more from Brazil. Today, it was a terrible match, 41 fouls, 26 for Uruguay, 15 for Brazil. Brazil was so poor in creation. Lucas Paqueta didn't play well. The midfield, actually, when we talk about the whole Copa America, the midfield for me of Brazil was maybe the main problem. We have many good forwards. We have a good defense also, but I think that Brazil is missing creation, is missing creative guys in the midfield. Lucas Paqueta didn't have a good tournament. The pair, João Gomes and Lucas Paqueta, maybe it is not a good solution for Brazil. And Dorival Jr. for sure has to learn with his mistakes. He has to learn fast because for Brazil there is no time for more losses, for more eliminations. The pressure over Dorival and the players now will be very high in Brazil.
Kasey, what did Brazil get wrong tonight?
Well, I think that's a good point. I mean, we've talked about it since their friendlies before this tournament and even now. I mean, there's zero creation in the midfield, which then forces what we think are creative players up front to try to do things on their own. And then when they end up getting marked by 2 or 3 guys, they have to pull off something special, which we haven't seen consistently. And therefore, they're kind of ineffective in the attack for the majority of the matches we've watched. And yes, they're decent defensively, and they've got a good goalkeeper, and they've got some things, but they're not the Brazil that we expect to see with the creativity coming out of midfield, the flair on the wings, strikers that can beat somebody and do something special. It was very one-dimensional. And then when you're playing against a team that wants to bully you, you try to puff your chest out and fight with them, and it was exactly what Uruguay wanted.
Ali, as a defender, what do you make of Uruguay's style? You like it? You hate it?
I like.
You want to play in it?
Yeah, I liked it tonight, actually. This is obviously the Uruguayan team that we hadn't seen in the group stage because they were obviously much better. Their combination play, they're getting the balls wide, they're picking players out, they have multiple goal scorers, and that was happening in group play. So, yeah, did you want to see that tonight? You did. But then they had to just disrupt the play because they knew this was going to be a battle against Brazil. They also needed to be physical. They had to focus until the very end, especially going a man down, with only 20 minutes left. They just had to get the job done and manage the game properly. Brazil, I wasn't surprised because it's not like they had played that well or even better than they performed tonight in the group stage matches. So that was probably the main, I guess the main thing that I saw tonight from both teams. Like it was pretty predictable. It was going to be a battle. It was going to be gritty. And, Uruguay did well in the penalty kicks and they lasted until the very end. They had their focus and they move on.
Were you surprised at the approach from Uruguay? I mean, I know historically they play that way, but
we all know what Uruguay has been historically
Yeah.
and how good they've been with that system and in that style of play. That's not surprising to me that Uruguay can play that way. It's surprising that Marcelo Bielsa would allow it to go there. Because when Marcelo Bielsa...
Do you feel like it was the plan all along? Because I felt like in the first half, Uruguay were pretty clearly better than Brazil.
They looked better than Brazil, but they weren't exactly threatening. And what I mean by that, we can go back and pick out one opportunity. It was the Darwin Nunez header from the right-hand side, that it was a clear and evident opportunity. And after that, you're maybe looking at a Valverde from distance, something like that. They were in or around the area with speed, but never actually penetrated the Brazilian defense. Marquinhos and Militao, for his credit, every time Darwin Nunez pulled him out of that central defensive position, he was with him at pace. And he was there. It was very well organized. They were very good when everything was in front of them. But for whatever reason, Brazil went down to the level, and I say this respectfully, of Uruguay. Took them where they wanted to. They made this a fight. And that's not what Brazil wants. Brazil may not be the Brazil of old, but there's still enough quality in that team to possess the ball, to move the ball, to at least give Endrick, to give Rodrigo, to give Rafinha an opportunity or two in this game. And it wasn't there. It really wasn't there. It was like maybe one half chance in the first half. But other than that, it was Uruguay bringing this to where they wanted. But to answer your question, I'm very surprised because under Marcelo Bielsa, he had spoken about a different style. He had spoken about a different Uruguay. And we saw an Uruguay that was very proactive in the final third with the creation in their wing play, direct, vertical, fast, in transition. It wasn't the Uruguay of old where you knew you were in for a fight and you had to roll up your sleeves. It was a much more pleasing Uruguay to the eye. But again, they did it against the U.S. men's national team, what they needed to win, whether it was aesthetic or not, and they did it again tonight.
Why would they be afraid to press this Brazil side? Because what we've seen from Brazil shouldn't have really scared them in the press. I mean, again,
do you think Bielsa
Gustavo,
just has a historical
any combination
respect?
play, anything where they kind of made you think, wow, that's Brazil. There's that 1-2 up,
You know what?
down, round.
They scared
and it
you.
was like,
if you think about it, Costa Rica, they obviously threatened versus Paraguay. They routed them. But then against Colombia, a couple times, like, okay, this a call that should have been called, the penalty kick that wasn't called. You're like, okay, this Brazilian team can give you some fits. So I understand why they respected him so much. I don't understand why they didn't respect themselves that much if they're Uruguay.
Yeah. But I also think that Uruguay, they provided that countermeasure movement where it was really difficult for Brazil to even have the combination play. I mean, they knew that they had to disrupt them, back to goal as much as they could in order to, disrupt the game and play to their advantage. So I think that Uruguay had a really good plan defensively to stay high up, to stay connected, to stay touch tight, and that didn't allow Brazil to.
I thought it was just a little bit deeper. You know what I mean? Like it was more like around midfield as opposed to 30 yards out. So when they won possession, they didn't have that quick ability to counter. It was like, okay, we won the ball back, but we're not threatening with winning the ball. Maybe Brazil recognized it and held an extra midfielder just to not allow that counter. But I'm still disappointed. I mean, I expect Brazil to combine in midfield. If a team wants to get too narrow, then you spring them wide. If they want to get split, then you beat the combination centrally. And it looked like what I've seen from the last couple games. It gets to one of their flair players, and everyone stands around while that person tries to dribble six people, and then they lose it, then they get it back. And it's just not team.
You're more disappointed in Brazil? See, I'm more disappointed in Uruguay.
Uruguay won, so I'm not disappointed in Uruguay.
Well, because I had my doubts about Uruguay and how far they could get. This just cements it. I don't think they're going to win this competition.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. I thought they would.
I mean, they went a man down with 20 minutes to go. They saw it out against Brazil. That's not proof of something to you?
Fine, but I saw a team that was already on fumes towards the end, even before they were a man down. It was just a fight. The Uruguay that we were promised, that I saw in World Cup qualifying, that I saw early on in this tournament, that was the most offensive team in this tournament, that constantly provided dangerous opportunities for their players, wasn't on display tonight. And if they're going to play with that intensity, Marcelo Bielsa's system, I don't think they're going to have enough in that tank to get all the way.
Let's bring it back to Brazil for a second, because we can't talk about their struggles, really, Gustavo, without mentioning Vinicous Jr., obviously a huge part of the Brazilian attack, not available. How much did they miss him? And then what did you think of Endrick's performance, the 17-year-old? How did he do?
I think that Endrick had a good performance. He's a guy who doesn't hide from the game. He always was looking for the ball. Of course, that it wasn't his best game for Brazil, but I think that he had a good game. Well, of course, that Brazil miss Vinicous. Brazil always will miss Vinicous, as he is the best player for Brazil nowadays. I think that Rodrigo could have a better game. In the first half, Rodrigo almost didn't touch the ball. In the second half, yes, he participated much more in the game. I think that Rafinha had also had a good performance. But as I said, I think that today the midfield really didn't appear. We didn't see Brazil's midfield. And actually what we saw today, it was a South American derby. For me, it was like a Libertadores match between a Brazilian team and an Uruguayan team. So many fights, so many discussions in the field. We almost didn't see really football. It was, for me, a traditional South American derby. I can understand Herculez' words about Uruguay, about the expectations when you have Marcelo Bielsa. But for me, it was like a traditional Uruguay and Brazil. Always fighting, always arguing, so many discussions in the field between the players. But of course, that when you have Marcelo Bielsa, you can expect more. But it was like a traditional Uruguay and Brazil match in the qualifying, for example.
Gustavo, just one win in the 4 games in this tournament for Brazil. You've talked a lot about Dorival Jr. and kind of having patience with the process, but they go out here in the quarterfinals. What'll the reaction be back home to this? Will there be anger, or is this kind of what people were expecting at this point out of this Brazil?
No, definitely not. That Dorival now will have to deal with a lot of pressure. People will be angry because, well, when I say that Brazil now must believe in the process, CBF, the Brazilian Football Confederation, must believe in the process. It is because there is no time for another change. Brazil missed the whole year in 2023. So there is no time now. You have to believe in Dorival Jr. They wanted Carlo Ancelotti. They were waiting for him without nothing guaranteed. And now they have to go with Dorival. A few games, we didn't see a good performance from Brazil in this tournament, except the match against Paraguay. I think that Dorival has to learn with his mistakes. He has to get more experience fast because, as I said, Brazil has no time to have a better team, to have a really good team. Brazil, I still believe that Brazil has a very good group of talented players. Now, Dorival Jr. Has to make this good group of talented players into a good team, as we had over the last years with Tite. Of course, that Brazil in the last 2 World Cups was disappointed, but the team with Tite was very strong, especially in the South American qualifying, and we haven't seen this over the last weeks, over the last months with Fernando Diniz also. So now it's gonna be a tough process because the pressure in Brazil will be very, very high over Dorival Jr. Let's see what happens, but I really don't believe in any change now.
You see something to build on for this Brazil?
I do.
Beyond the player talent pool?
Well, it depends on one player.
Who?
Neymar Jr. If you can get Neymar Jr. back to the Neymar Jr. that, regardless of what you may think of him, talent is there and he's physically fit, This team has an opportunity because there goes your creativity in the center. There is somebody to pull the strings, somebody to make Rodrigo play, somebody to make Vini Jr. play, somebody to make Endrick blossom and grow, and those below him or around him. I really do think there will be more pressure on Neymar Jr. than Dorival.
Well, if James Rodriguez